In the year 2023, there was 3 new debts that were issued, 2 borrowing and 1 credit. The credit is revolving credit facility agreement. The 2 borrowings, one is commercial borrowing, and the other one is an unsecured bridge loan. The credits, we see that it is aggregate borrowing up to $5 billion for a 5-year period. But the $2 billion revolving credit was set to expire in September of this year, but it was actually terminated in August 2023 with no outstanding borrowing. The first borrowing, or the commercial paper, we see that it usually matures for 1 year from issuance, and there is no proceeds for this one, only $200 million of repayments for maturities that are greater than 90 days or 3 months. On the second borrowing, or the bridge loan specifically, the debt due dates, while there is a plethora of them, are set from 2026 to 2054. And all of these different due dates have varying interest rates, and the range does sit between 1.5% to 7.5%. As we see that there are paybacks in this current year, and it adds up to about $5.71 million over 2 different notes. In regards to long-term debt, there is no debt extinguishment or retirement of debt in the year 2023. The last time we did see this on the books of RTX, it was in 2021. We do start looking at the debt capital structure. It is unsecured due to no asset backing. We do have linens that are not layered because there's no identifying factors in the 10K. Within the tax provision footnote, the tax expenses are split up into current and future of the deferred taxes. It is furthermore broken down into federal, state, and foreign taxes to help grasp how taxable income was determined and the strategies of RTX. Here we see the statement of operations and these numbers broken down. We see the income tax expense is roughly $500 million for the fiscal year. I'm going to use this chart now to help explain how DTAs and DTLs are calculated for a company. We have 2 different accounting methods. On the left, we have GAAP, or the accrual method, and we have income tax on the right, which is also the cash method. Within these, we have GAAP basis and tax basis, and these are dictated by the journal entries that are provided. And we see the calculations for how we eventually get to net income or taxable income, depending on which method you do take. Taxable income times that tax rate that you're using, it will get you the income tax payable. Next, we see that rolling back to the top, based off of the bases of the various methods, the difference between these values is called the temporary difference. And when you multiply that by the tax rate, you get your DTA or DTL. During the year 2023, we have 2 different instances of a DTA/DTL. We have future income tax benefits, and this sits around $5 billion for the year. And since that is a greater value in the tax basis, it creates a DTA. Our second one is future income tax payable. And since this is within the GAAP basis, those journal entries are greater in that, so our temporary difference is going to lead to us to have an $8 billion DTL. Diving into the future income tax benefits, we see that we have insurance and employee benefits. We have balances of inventory and contracts, warranty and tax credits. Future income tax payables, though, we have goodwill, intangible assets, fixed assets, and other different basis differences that were in previous journal entries. Lastly, we can calculate a valuation allowance, and this is what is not going to be recognized. And how we calculate this is our DTA times the percent for which we're not going to be able to recognize. And a key thing is to know that you can only multiply it by the DTAs, not DTL. As we see, breaking down a little bit more, it is the tax credit carry forward, the tax loss carry forward, and the certain temporary differences. The next key aspect is stockholders' equity. We've authorized stock, preferred and common stock. Both of them have a par of $1. As we see, we have $250,000 worth of preferred authorized stock, but no are issued. On the other hand, we have 4 million authorized common shares. Common stock can then be split into unissued common stock and issued common stock. For the issued common stock, on the initial delivery date, there was 1.8 million stocks that were delivered at $78.38 per share, or the fair market value for that. Breaking down a little bit more, we see that there are restricted stock underneath the unissued common stock. Once a company issues out common stock into the market, they have the option to buy back those shares or repurchase them, and those are then classified as treasury stock. And RTX does expect to repurchase about 85% of their shares. During 2023, about $8.5 billion increase in treasury, and there was about a $1.5 billion decrease in common stock. Jumping to the bottom of the screen, we have other comprehensive income, or OCI. We have 4 different groups. These are all recorded as components of net pension income. We have foreign currency translation, pension and post-retirement, we have unrealized hedging gains, and accumulated OCI loss. We do have redeemable non-controlling interest of $35 million in 2023. This upcoming green text is in regards to the share-based compensation, and RTX has one plan in 2023. For now, I want to go into where these will be identified and categorized depending on what type of compensation is being received. Units and options will start off as unissued common stock. These will move over at the end of each year with the required amount. They will become restricted stock. After the vesting period, they will move over to issued stock. As you see, shares start off in restricted stock. These will stay in the restricted stock until the end of the vesting period, and then they will move over to issued common stock. For these shares, restricted stock all the way back to authorized stock were put forth. Your journal entries, if you forfeit units, you have to move it back to unissued common stock before you move to authorized stock. As I said before, RTX has one compensation plan, and all the details are similar for anything presented forth. The cumulative share-based payments in 2023 was about $500 million. Diving into the details, our grant date or approval date was April 26th of 2021. On the authorization date, 156.3 million shares were put forth. As you can see now, in this past year, we now have 63.3 million still available, which is roughly 40.5% of the initial share amount. The vesting period is 3 years. That means this past April, the units, shares, options, and appreciation rights were available. On December 31st of 2023, the cash received of the stock options was $22 million. The term for this share-based compensation plan is 10 years. With this in mind, the 2018 LTIP expires when all authorized shares have been awarded or on April 26th of 2031. There is an option for individuals who retire between April 2021 and 2024 who've been there longer than a year. They have the option to vest and exercise their compensation, but they are subject to certain terms and conditions. RTX is a complex capital structure. It has convertibles in the form of stock awards and equity units. I put before you the equation for basic EPS, net income over weighted average common shares outstanding. There is an if converted method, which has 2 different sections, one for convertible debt and the other one for convertible equity. We also have 2 different equations for the diluted EPS. If you are dealing with debt, it's the interest expense that you add to the numerator and the new common shares added to the denominator. A key thing about calculating interest expense, you have to use the tax rate. For convertible equity, you have to add back the preferred dividend, and you have to add back the new common stock to the denominator. As we see, the basic EPS in 2023 is $2.24, while the diluted EPS is $2.23. RTX does have leases, and there are lessee and leaser. If you are a lessee, You have the option to have operating leases or financing leases. And for leaser, you have operating leases or sales type leases. About $500 million is consisting of mostly operating leases for the year 2023. And there is $168 million of right-of-use assets in leases. Diving in a little bit more, the lease agreements are for real estate spaces, vehicles, information technology equipment, and then certain equipment that is both under operating and financing leases. Lastly, we dive into the cash flow statement. We start off with operating activities. And this is what Raytheon does and how it collects its money. We use the indirect method, which is the reconciliation of net income to operating activities of the cash flow statement. We see the entries on the right in the table. Next, investing activities, which has long-term assets, other people's debt, and other people's equity. We have a table on the right, and we can see that the capital expenditures hold a massive negative amount, leading to a total negative investing activities amount for 2023, which is about $3 billion. Lastly, we have financing activities. This is our debt, our equity, and paying out the dividends. As we see on the third to last line, we have a negative of $3 billion paid out in common stock. Key thing to remember, we don't have any preferred stock issued, so there won't be any dividends paid out to them. It will only be paid out to common stock holders. In totality, the financing activities conclude at about $4.5 billion for the year of 2023. Adding up these three different facets of the cash flow statement, we see that there is a sum of about $300 million does come from operating activities because it is the positive value of the cash flow statement. But if you dive down in a little bit deeper, there are positive and negative values within the three buckets of the cash flow statement.